breaking down the Hong Kong fights and why GVK action is a writing nightmare. By Hellfire, be right back on Monsterverse Reddit. Introduction. After the dust settled and the hype train stopped, many people in this sub have been in an internal discussion over topics brought down by GVK, and many of them being related to how much each of the characters have been respected, and which side have the Monsterverse writers picked. I one step aside from the objective to settle the discussion of which character got the most disrespect writing rise. In my previous post, can we all stop fighting and just agree that all the monsters in GVK got disrespected in some shape or form? And now, link in the comments by the way, I step here again with the objectives to showcase how poorly written are the action scenes in GVK and how such fundamental problems damage the overall movie. Part 1. Godzilla, King of the Inconsistencies. From Godzilla's side, the biggest problem with his side of the action is how inconsistent he is all through the movie, not only with how he was portrayed in the previous interaction of the MV, but also with the movie itself. Here are some examples. The atomic breath's power, accuracy, and fundamentally how it works all through the movie, with little to no concern for consistencies. Godzilla's most powerful weapon, established as his ultimate trump card, a slow-charging weapon that costs a lot of resources. Due to its high cost, high-reward nature, Godzilla would consistently use this weapon sparsely and with caution, aiming to deal the most damage in the most effective ways he could to not waste his resources. After bulking up into shape in the 5-year span between Godzilla 2014 and King of the Monsters and storing energy to fight Ghidorah, Godzilla still remains consistent with his use of atomic breath. Despite having more ammo and power, he still does not waste the resources dumbly. Even after being considerably powered up to fight Ghidorah, Godzilla still only takes cheap shots at Ghidorah, using his weaponry in extreme need, or when he has an easy, efficient shot. Even in this situation, where he has a free guaranteed shot, he still goes for the grapple to immobilize his target, rather than wasting energy ineffectively. Even in GVK, he still remains somewhat true to this basic mentality, at least until the Hong Kong fight. During the Florida attack, he manages to pinpoint and perfectly shoot not one, but two small fast-moving targets on the first try, again showing Godzilla's relative accuracy. There are only 2 instances where Godzilla uses his atomic breath before the Hong Kong battle, excluding drilling the hole. Pay attention to those situations. Notice how in both of those occasions, Godzilla only uses his atomic breath when he has a strategic advantage or a guaranteed kill shot in which Kong can't get to defend himself, remaining consistent with his spare and strategic use of his weapons, focusing more on overpowering Kong in melee combat before spamming his attack mindlessly, and going for the less costly kill attacks like immobilizing or drawing Kong in the same way he did with the Mutos and Ghidorahs in the previous movies. Now, we go to the Hong Kong fight, where Godzilla's uses of the atomic breath is, for the lack of better words, retarded. The fight starts in a solid way, with Godzilla taking the upper hand to grab and hold Kong, where he immediately turns off his brains off to use his atomic breath. Pay attention to Godzilla's arm. Note how Godzilla starts the fight by holding Kong with his hand and throwing him around while he pulls his attack with his jaws, a behavior which is consistent with his previous fighting style of prioritizing immobilization in over mindless spamming, and consistently consistency that is immediately destroyed the moment Kong raises his hands. After Kong breaks Godzilla's grapple, note how Godzilla turns his head away and he willingly loosens his hands from Kong. Godzilla turns his head in the opposite direction of Kong and shoots without even aiming in the complete opposite direction. Note that Kong isn't even touching Godzilla as he charges his breath, or in the first frame where he's shooting. There is no force pushing Godzilla away from Kong. Godzilla is willingly missing for no reason. After this awful action, Godzilla uses his breath to burn Kong's finger, breaking his grapple made by Kong. However, again, goes back to his lack of aim almost immediately. Godzilla shoots a second atomic breath against nothing without even thinking. Notice how badly positioned Kong is, with one of his legs barely touching the ground, and the position of Godzilla's claw and jaws are in relation to Kong's position. His tail is also not immobilized, and did I mention that Kong is in the direct contact with his sharp, hot, and pointy dorsal plates? Godzilla has all of his weapons pointed at Kong, waiting to be used, but instead, he decided to use the only weapon that has zero chance of hitting. And even after being punished so hardly for his reckless use of atomic breath, Godzilla continued to spam his attack despite Kong having the clear position advantages and not being within range. And even after being punished so many times for this mindless spam, do you think Godzilla learns his lesson? No. He immediately goes back to charging his breath while not even trying to engage in melee combat against Kong, which leads to him being punished again. Godzilla casually being blind. After properly engaging in melee with Kong and disarming him, the process, Godzilla immediately starts to spam again. This time, in many instances where he does not even aim remotely in Kong's direction, many times hitting kilometers away from his target. As soon as the Mechagodzilla's battle begins, Godzilla's aim shifts again. This time, after his atrocious aim in the previous fight, he is suddenly able to pinpoint and shoot a small moving axe in Kong's hand perfectly on the first try, without missing and hitting Kong or Mechagodzilla in the process. And that is not even like Godzilla is that bad at aiming. The movie itself gives us an example of this in the only instances where Godzilla is not spamming. I don't mean God be like, "Hey Godzilla, can you stop spamming and hit Kong? I need to build up tension." Godzilla says, "Yeah, sure." Stop spamming and actually aims. Hit Kong! And those inconsistencies aren't just how Godzilla uses his breath, but also extends all the way to how powerful the breath is. I think that changes literally from scene to scene. And those inconsistencies aren't just how Godzilla uses his breath, but also extends all the way to how powerful it is again. In many occasions, Godzilla's breath was shown to be powerful enough to not only push only Kong, but Ghidorah himself several hundred meters with little to no effort. And through the entirety of GVK, the breath is shown to be powerful enough he is capable of cutting entire buildings in half. And somehow, a random piece of debris can not only nullify all the knockback and damage, but also survives relatively unharmed after a few seconds of being hit. If this isn't enough for you to understand how stupid Godzilla is, for no reason through the action scenes, all it will take is for you to see my next topic. Godzilla loves to get hit on purpose for no reason. As I already touched earlier in this post, there is many instances where Godzilla willingly misses attacks for no reasons. However, in many occasions, Godzilla also walks into a danger zone in a similar but just as much of a dumb way. And somehow, the best example of this is during the axe to the mouth scene, where again Godzilla mindlessly spams his breath against Kong. Pay attention to Godzilla's movement in this scene. where he rushes towards Kong, charging his breath before shooting. Despite having the range advantages, he still goes towards Kong and attempts an attack at melee range, losing his advantages in the process. As the scene progresses, Godzilla does not even attempt to engage in melee combat with Kong. Godzilla quite literally just walks into Kong and refuses to use any of his melee attacks. He does not use his claw, bites, or even continue to raw Kong. He just walks towards him and stops in the exact movement Kong's hands touches his chest and gives little to no retaliation to Kong's movement, essentially giving Kong a free turn and space to take his own action. During the Mechagodzilla fights, after proving that mindlessly advancing against Mechagodzilla is not a valid strategy, Godzilla continuously runs towards Mechagodzilla, getting dunked more every time. In many instances, Godzilla just walks into Mechagodzilla and stops, either roaring on his face or standing still, getting free hits for no reasons. Godzilla constantly standing still, roaring at nothing while Mechagodzilla punches him, as Godzilla allows himself to take those cheap shots. And then, after proving that mindlessly rushing towards Mechagodzilla is not a valid strategy, Godzilla proceeds to do it again. This latter, this mentality of no retaliation, directly contradicts his behavior in King of the Monsters. Godzilla stands still as Mechagodzilla goes for a kill grab, as Godzilla refuses to fight back, despite already dealing effectively with a situation that mirrors this one in a previous installment. Godzilla uses his atomic breath to break a similar grapple made by Ghidorah, a thing he does not even attempt against Mechagodzilla. Even at death's door, he does not stop fighting back until he has zero option to react or is too wounded to fight back, which is nor a factor here since he still gets back up to help Kong after being saved. So, what is the reason for all of this? If you pay close attention to all of the problems I pointed out, you notice a similar trend with all of the issues above. It is not Godzilla's turn as a spotlight. In every one of the occasions mentioned, Godzilla is used as a tool for a plot rather than a character. His accuracy and power increases and decreases depending on what the scene demands it to be. Godzilla is not blind or dumb. The plot just needs him to miss. His breath is not weaker or stronger. The scene just needs him to be nerfed so Kong can pull out his sick move with a shield, despite such scene not making any logical sense. And that same goes for Mechagodzilla vs. Godzilla. Godzilla is neither losing or weaker than Mechagodzilla. The plot just demands that he gets his ass kicked so Mechagodzilla can be shoehorned as a last-minute treat worthy of Kong. This is why Godzilla does not retaliate or take free hits. The movie needs him to do as such so Kong can save him last minute, forcing a fake sensation of tension instead of properly writing a fighting scene. And this is not good for Mechagodzilla or Kong, as I will talk in the next topic. This is just bad writing on its purest form. Part 2. Kong, why not picking a side will bite you in the ass. The biggest issue with Kong is the fact that the creators of this movie refuse to pick a side in a predetermined fight, trying their best to please both sides, but at the end of the day, it ends up breaking consistencies even more and creating even more examples of bad writing. They focus too much on making Kong look good rather than making him do good. The greatest reason to why so many problems are created within the movie is because of the consistent attempts of making a scene look good rather than making such scene make sense, and this is one of the rare cases where the rule of cool backfires. And you can't see a better example than how Kong fights Godzilla. Coming back to this scene, you can see the problems already spouting and many solutions being visible. A great example of trying too hard to make Kong look good is when Godzilla and Kong first spare some attacks at the very beginning of the Hong Kong battle, As stated before, Godzilla loosens his grips on Kong and immediately misses his attack. However, Kong hits Godzilla on his dorsal plate, somehow not taking any damage from shoving his arm against a bunch of hot pointy knife and starts to punch Godzilla again and again. However, this strategy does not make sense when you think too much about it. In many instances, Kong just mindlessly runs towards Godzilla in the straight line, punching or grappling in the worst or the most inefficient way he can. In all those occasions, Kong is not punished for his action. He constantly does dumb stuff like standing over a bunch of sharp, hot, pointy dorsal plates, and he gets away from it unharmed. And this is also the same reason why Godzilla is so inconsistent through the movie. They wanted to make Kong look good rather than make him do good, and this results in Godzilla looking dumb instead of looking good. Kong just feels like he is wearing more plot armor than what he should. When I real- realize his moments in the spotlights are forced rather than being earned. A scene might look good, but it makes no sense when you think about it too much about it. And this problem extends all the way to the end of the movie, where consistency is broken constantly, and the basic logic is ignored in favor of making Kong look good rather than making the scene make sense. Godzilla is not dumb, he is reacting because he needs to wait for Kong to take his turn. Even when Kong is supposed to be losing, the scenes are built around him being heroic and looking good rather than being logical. And the best example of this is Mechagodzilla's defeat. During the entire scene, Mechagodzilla completely stops using any of his weapons, not charging or using his proton screams a single time in the entire battle, ignoring Kong in many situations, and even just goes out of his way to not attack Kong when he could and should. And many would argue that Mechagodzilla is after Godzilla, but this is completely debunked by the alcohol scene, where Kong has Kong in his life on the paws of his claws, yet he refuses to use any of his weapons or take any actions against Kong. He just stands there, staring at Kong for almost a full minute. A full minute where he does not attack Kong. Godzilla stays in the background doing absolutely nothing, and the humans talk about the fight rather than be active on helping. Just like Godzilla waits to be safe, Mechagodzilla waits to be killed. Godzilla's victory, and why so much forcation makes it anticlimactic. The great problem with this mentality is that it breaks the immersion of all action scene Kong is in, as long as you can use your brain to think about them more than what the movie expects you to do. And this is why Godzilla's final victory feels so weird. This is why the entire fight feels so one-sided for Godzilla, despite Kong being the main focus of every section. This is because Kong's domination is forced, and Godzilla's victory conflicts with those scenes. The moment Godzilla bites Kong's arm is the moment the writers are satisfied with Kong's performance. The moment Godzilla bites that arm is the moment the writer finally stops trying to make Kong look good and give Godzilla some time in the spotlight. And after so much being established, after so much of the movie being built up over Kong, Godzilla has his time to look good, and it conflicts with the rest of what was written, and this result on the entire section not only being one-sided but also look anticlimactic. This is all because Adam and the remaining team behind GVK couldn't pick a side, so they picked both. They wanted Godzilla to win, but at the same time, they wanted Kong to get the scenes. They wanted to make Godzilla kill Kong, but didn't want to go harsh on him. When you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing no one. Part 3. Mechagodzilla, a shadow of himself. In this point, There is not much to say about the fight. The entire Mechagodzilla battle is built around paying Kong for his defeat, rather than making a satisfactory team-up battle. And this is its main issues, however. Mechagodzilla suffers from an even larger problem. Mechagodzilla is not a treat, a character, or a monster. He's merely the loser's consolation prize. And that is the greatest example Mechagodzilla has. No matter who wins the title battle, the winner would always get his ass dunked. The, the loser would always get an unrealistic focus on the final battle, I think further shown by Mechagodzilla's lack of character. This is even shown by Mechagodzilla's basic build, where you can even argue that for a Godzilla killing weapon, he is pretty bad at killing Godzilla. Power scaling be like. And his presence in the movie is merely built towards a singular objective, being worthy of the loser's trophy. He is armed with the worst weapons to kill Godzilla, freaking missiles. From missiles who can't even harm him, a proton-based weapon against a nuclear-resistant target, a plasma-based weapons against a heat-resistant target. I mean, to be fair, come on, even Hero, a human-made Mechagodzilla, can do better. And why all that? Because it all sounds and look cool. Look not further than Mechagodzilla's size, which was considerably increased in comparison to what his original design intended. Heisei Mechagodzilla. And this perfectly encapsulates his problem. Mechagodzilla is not a Godzilla killer weapon. He is just Godzilla, but bigger, faster, more armed, and more powerful. He sounds cool in practice, but makes no sense in a play for a simple reason. He is not made to kill Godzilla. He is made to look intimidating so he can get killed by Kong. Even Heisei Kiryu could do better than that. Compare this with the older incarnations and how he was built to be Godzilla to smash. No missiles, not just missiles. He has laser cannons. No plasma weapons. He has energy shields like in 1974. No proton screams. Just space beam, mega buster, or laser mouth like Hero. He has electric-based weapons that attack Godzilla's nervous system. Mechagodzilla is not designed to make sense. He is designed to look cool. And of course, this is also why MonsterVerse Mechagodzilla gets a lot of crap in power scalings. Conclusions. The problem with GVK is not that Kong or Godzilla got disrespected, or that Mechagodzilla is just bad. The answer for all of your problems with Godzilla vs. Kong is simple. Godzilla vs. Kong is a poorly written movie. In no way this means Godzilla vs. Kong is bad, since the movie succeeds in making every aspect it tries to. However, it is a movie that wants you to not think about it. Author's note. I have no intent in sparking another war on this sub. I have no issues with Adam or the other writers of the MV, and would be happy in seeing him come back for more movies. But I respect you guys to stop arguing with each other and just start expecting more of the next MonsterVerse Godzilla movies. And remember, just because it is a monster movie, it does not mean it needs to be dumb. Dumb fun isn't always fun. Not when the dumb part goes against the fun.